Watching the collapse of the British Conservative Party after 190 years of its existence has been quite the experience, but this latest twist is frankly just out of this world. The party's campaign director and two Conservative candidates have been embroiled in what is being described as a row over alleged betting on the general election day. The Tory campaigns director, Tony Lee, is the husband of Laura Saunders, the Tory candidate in Bristol North West, who previously worked in Tory party HQ. Now she's facing an inquiry. Now this Tory campaigns director has gone on a leave of absence. Now some of you might be surprised to hear the Tories even have a campaigns director, given how things are going, but it's 2 weeks before a general election and the governing party has just lost its campaigns director. That, frankly, is completely and utterly insane, but also pretty funny, if we'll be honest. Now, last week it was revealed that the closest aide of Rishi Sunak, Prime Minister for another fortnight, placed a £100 bet with Ladbrokes at 5-1 on a July poll. That triggered the Gambling Commission to order the bookies to go through all significant bets that had been placed on an election in July. It gets even funnier. Yesterday, the Tories put out a video with the text, "If you bet on Labour, you can never win," featuring a gambling machine. They then deleted it. Not quite sure why they did that. Obviously, they've never heard of the Streisand effect. Do look that up if you want to avoid the same fate. But then it gets truly disturbing. Jim Waterson, political media editor at The Guardian, has put out a graph which is data scraped from Betfair on bets made on a July election. It shows amounts matched on such an election from 13th of May to 21st of May, the day before Rishi Sunak announced the general election. There were paltry amounts on the 13th, the 14th, the 15th, the 16th, a slight increase on the 17th, small amounts the next couple of days, again, slight increase on 20th of May, then a massive, huge jump on the 21st of May, the day before Rishi Sunak publicly announced an election. What the hell's going on there then? Why would bets surge the day before the election was publicly announced? Well, it wasn't trailed in any shape or form the day before. How many people could possibly have known about the general election? Rishi Sunak surely kept it solely to his inner circle, otherwise it just would have leaked all over the media. Well, we don't know for sure what's happened, do we? If, though, there have been bets by senior Tories, or indeed their relatives, loved ones, friends, on an early general election because they were party to that information. Like, I'm not a lawyer, but that sounds pretty wildly criminal to me. Seeking to gain profits from betting on an election which they know can only end in the destruction of their government. Well, as many pointed out, the echoes of the last days of Rome are pretty strong, aren't they? It would be an appropriate finale for the Conservative Party with its ideology that seeks to put a price on everything, which sees everything as an opportunity for profit, up to and including their own destruction as a political force. For generations, they're going to study this Conservative Party election campaign, word used loosely. They had already imploded before this, I get that. Thanks to everything from Liz Truss to Partygate, the cost of living crisis to an imploding NHS, civil war within the Conservatives, scandals to the lasting consequence of austerity. But what was Rishi Sunak thinking when he called this early general election? If he'd waited, inflation would have come down and Nigel Farage would be gallivanting off across the states, campaigning alongside his good pal Donald Trump. So then Rishi Sunak calls this deranged general election, which involves throwing ludicrous policies at the wall, like national service, dictating to young adults they must do unpaid work in their free time, and insulting these socially conservative voters, deserting the Tories by legging it early from D-Day commemorations. Sunak's best attempt was lying about Labour's policies, inventing a £2,000 a year tax hike, when actually Labour's real failure on that front is refusing to raise taxes on the well-off to invest in our collapsing public services. But this general election overall is a travesty. The collapse of the Conservative Party is a certainty and deserved after how they trashed this country. But any meaningful debate about what happens next is almost completely and utterly non-existent. There's no big public debate about the £20 billion a year black hole in public spending that has to be filled just to avoid further cuts. That is just to stand still in our current catastrophic position as a country after so many years of austerity. Fixing our National Health Service in the midst of an ageing population and a social care sector on its knees, investing in the jobs of the future, tackling child poverty, our dire crumbling infrastructure, the crisis in living standards, taking on the existential menace of the climate emergency, but also so it's an opportunity which improves our standard of life, creates decent jobs, improves our health. Britain's complicity in a genocide, Israel's murderous onslaught against Gaza, of course. We could go on, couldn't we? There's so much for us to talk about as a country. But instead, the discussion has almost entirely revolved around a never-ending battery of opinion polls, all pointing to variations around the same thing. The Tories are going to get annihilated. Labour are going to win some form or other of a landslide. Now, how big that landslide is, the exact seats that are going to shift hands, That's not entirely sure. But the overall picture's the same. And that's all the discussion's about. There's nothing actually tangible or meaningful about what the next inevitable government is going to do about our country and our lives. There's no discussion about that. There's also kicking the Tories now, convenient, a little late in the day. Notice how courageous the media is at doing all that now. Well, that's because they know the Tories are finished. They're dead in the water. They don't need to care about access to the Conservatives. They don't need to care about being frozen out by CCHQ, the Tory nerve centre, if they displease the Tory hierarchy, because the Tories are getting obliterated in 2 weeks' time. So it's a free-for-all. Meanwhile, they know that Labour are set to win a colossal landslide and could well be in government for a very, very long time indeed. So they're desperate for access to be fed lines and tidbits and advanced briefings and gossip. Some of them will end up working for the government. So that means not asking Labour any tricky questions for fear of getting on the wrong side of them. Don't believe me? Listen to this absolutely extraordinary exchange between two former senior BBC journalists, Lewis Goodall and Emily Maitlis.
You do not, right? This is happening more and more. Politicians do not get to decide what we or the media or what anybody, a member of the public, asks about in a general election. That's kind of how democracy works. If that breaks down, then a fundamental part of democracy just stops working.
I tell you what I'd say to that is that this has always happened, but the fact that broadcasters are now letting you see those workings behind the camera and amplifying those on Twitter tells you that they are no longer scared of the power that Tory Central Office holds over them. It is not like the days where a lot of broadcasters were sort of running around trying to please Boris Johnson, trying to please David Cameron, sort of cheerleading along that government. Now they've kind of decided that Rishi Sunak and, dare I say, Richard Holden probably won't matter politically that much in a month's time, and therefore they can pretty much do what they want.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. You can see the power evaporating. If it was a Labour equivalent now, might not be
do
quite
what they're
so
told.
aggressive.
Yeah. So in a moment...
What, and I must ask this, and do pardon the French, what the flying fuck is that? I beg your pardon. They casually explain that news broadcasters are now letting viewers see behind the curtains because they're no longer scared of the power of Tory Central Office. Instead of when broadcasters are trying to please Tory Prime Ministers and sort of cheerleading along that government, as it's described there. I mean, they're talking about broadcasters here, not our absurdly partisan newspapers. So they've decided these Tory figures won't matter very much now, so they can do what they want. That's the gist. Now, I'm not attacking Lewis Goodall and Emily Maitlis here. Quite the opposite. Commendable to be so open and candid. We need to know how our media works in this country. But that should be a scandal. How the incestuous relationships between news broadcasters who were supposed to impartially speak truth to power, who to scrutinise the government and those who rule us, and how that's only now broken down because they're cozying up to the next inevitable government to have another incestuous relationship with, because they know the current one's dead in the water. Are you serious? Now, you can see now, I'm afraid, countless examples of client journalists. I mean, I keep looking at it and just thinking, not very subtle, is it? I'm talking about journalists who are simply regurgitating Labour lines now and aren't riding for them in the way the Conservative Party used to enjoy. I'm told by left-wing Labour MPs that they're wary of briefing certain journalists because they believe some of them will end up working for the next Labour government in number 10 and will pass on that information to their future paymasters. Well, all I'd say is, guys, we deserve better than this, surely. That is not a functioning democracy, is it? It's a parody of a democracy. Much of the reason this country is in such a mess is the failure to have any meaningful discussion about the issues which actually matter and scrutiny about what political parties intend to do about them. And so this general election shows all of that. No meaningful discussion about anything other than laughing and pointing at the Tories. Now they've completely fallen apart, and a battery of polls showing the inevitable Labour landslide thanks to Tory collapse, and media going, oh wow, look at that. That's our election campaign. Which is, as I keep saying, given the inevitable result, you should vote Green or Independent. Because as things stand, you're going to get a Labour landslide. I mean, that is absolutely inevitable. But it's not scrutinised. There's no pressure on it. It's going to just get a landslide to do what it wants for 5 years with no discussion about what that even means. So that's why you should vote Green or Independent. There's no risk, is there? Unless you've got a good left-wing Labour candidate. Because otherwise, this shit show will never end. We're never going to talk about the issues that actually matter in this country. And we do deserve better than that. Please like and subscribe. Do leave your comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Do help us keep the show on the road. I think what we're trying to do with this channel, this project, I think will be far more important in the years ahead. You can help us on patreon.com/OwenJones84. We've got more videos, documentaries to come. Listen to the podcast. I'll speak to you soon.